So picture this. Monty's been working hard for months. Every time he finds a few extra bananas, he doesn't eat them. He puts them in a nice little coconut jar for safekeeping. Week after week, month after month, that pile keeps getting bigger. 5,000 bananas, maybe even 10 or 15,000. And Monty's feeling pretty proud of himself. Honestly, he should be. Saving money is one of the smartest habits you can build. But here's the part that surprises a lot of monkeys. If those bananas are just sitting in the coconut jar or in a traditional savings account, they might actually be losing value over time. Why? Because inflation is quietly making everything more expensive every year. Meanwhile, that tiny 0.5% interest your bank is paying isn't doing nearly enough to keep up. So even though your account balance is growing a little, your money's buying power is actually shrinking. So today, we're going to walk through the simple, step-by-step path to take those savings and turn them into something that can actually build wealth over time. And don't worry, it's way simpler than most people think. Before we get into the steps, let me just address the elephant in the room. Why do so many people stay stuck in savings mode forever? Why does that pile of money just sit there, growing at a snail's pace, when it could theoretically be working so much harder? The honest answer is psychology. Saving feels safe. You can log into your bank app right now and see exactly how much you have. It doesn't go down on a random Wednesday afternoon. But investing feels different. It feels like gambling to a lot of people, especially if they've never done it before. Markets move around, headlines get scary, and the fear of losing money keeps millions of people from ever taking that first step. But here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. Saving and investing are not competing ideas. They're actually two different tools built for two completely different jobs. Savings protect your money, investments grow your money, and you genuinely need both working together if you want to build any kind of real financial future. Now, let me show you why this gap matters so much in practical terms. Take $10,000 sitting in a typical savings account, earning around 1% annually. After 20 years, you'd have roughly $12,000. Not bad, but not exactly life-changing. Now take that same $10,000 and put it in a broadly diversified investment like a total market index fund, which has historically averaged somewhere around 8 to 10% per year over long periods. After those same 20 years, you could potentially be looking at something closer to $60,000 or even $67,000. Same starting amount, same 20 years. Wildly different outcome. And the reason for that gap isn't luck, it's compounding. The longer your money is invested, the more it earns on top of what it already earned, and that cycle builds on itself in a way that savings accounts simply cannot match. Okay, so now let's actually walk through the steps. And I want to emphasize that these steps are meant to be done in a specific order. Skipping ahead might feel exciting, but it usually creates more problems than it solves. Step 1 is building a real emergency fund before you invest a single dollar anywhere. This is non-negotiable. You need somewhere between 3 and 6 months of your actual living expenses sitting in a liquid, accessible savings account. Not invested, not tied up anywhere, just available. The reason this step comes first is that it actually protects your investments later on. One of the most common mistakes new investors make is getting into the market and then being forced to sell everything the moment an unexpected expense hits. Car repair, medical bill, sudden job loss. Without a cash cushion, you become your own worst enemy because you'll be selling investments at exactly the wrong time. Your emergency fund is essentially insurance for your investment strategy. It keeps you in the game when real life gets messy. If 3 to 6 months feels overwhelming right now, start smaller. Getting your first $1,000 set aside creates a meaningful psychological buffer. Then build toward 1 month of expenses, then 3. Break it down into stages and it stops feeling impossible. Step 2 is something a lot of people skip entirely, and that's dealing with any high-interest debt you're carrying before you invest beyond that emergency fund. If you have credit card balances charging you somewhere around 20% interest annually, Investing while carrying that debt is essentially one step forward and two steps back. Think about it this way. A guaranteed 20% return by eliminating that debt is almost certainly better than anything the market is going to give you, especially after accounting for taxes and fees. Pay off the high-rate stuff first. Get that anchor off your portfolio before you start trying to grow it. The one exception to this rule is if your employer offers a matching contribution on retirement savings. If your job will match your contributions dollar for dollar, or even 50 cents on the dollar, you should contribute at least enough to capture that full match, even while you're paying down debt. That employer match is essentially 100% instant return on your money, and passing on it is one of the most expensive financial mistakes you can make. Step 3 is where the actual investing begins, and it starts inside tax-advantaged accounts. If you have access to a workplace retirement plan like a 401k, start there. Once you've captured any employer match, consider opening an individual retirement account, commonly called an IRA. The reason these accounts come before regular investment accounts is tax efficiency. In a Roth IRA, for example, your money grows completely tax-free, and qualified withdrawals in retirement won't cost you a dime in taxes. In a traditional IRA or traditional 401k, you get a tax deduction now and pay taxes when you withdraw later. Either way, these accounts let your money compound without the annual drag of taxes on dividends and capital gains, and that difference adds up to enormous amounts over decades. For most people who are earlier in their careers and in a lower tax bracket right now, a Roth account tends to make a lot of sense because you're paying taxes at today's lower rate rather than potentially higher rates down the road. Step 4 is choosing what to actually invest in, and here is where simplicity genuinely wins. If you're new to investing, please don't start with individual stocks, options, or cryptocurrency speculation. The simplest approach for most long-term investors is low-cost index funds. These funds hold hundreds or even thousands of companies inside a single investment, which means you're automatically diversified. You're not betting on one company doing well, you're essentially betting on the broad economy doing what it's done throughout history, which is grow over time. Legendary investors like Warren Buffett have publicly advocated for low-cost index funds as the most practical choice for ordinary investors, and the data tends to support that view. Low fees matter enormously here too. Even a 1% difference in annual fees can compound into tens of thousands of dollars of lost wealth over a 30-year horizon. Step 5 is probably the most underrated thing in all of personal finance, and that is consistency. Not timing the market, not waiting for a crash to invest, not trying to pick the next big winner, just investing a set amount every single month, regardless of what the market is doing. This strategy is called dollar cost averaging, and it works because it removes emotion from the equation entirely. When markets go down, your regular contributions buy more shares at lower prices. When markets recover, those extra shares are suddenly worth more. You don't have to be a genius or have perfect timing. You just have to show up consistently. If you invested $300 a month into the market and earned an average of 8% annually over 25 years, you'd potentially accumulate somewhere around $280,000. Your total cash contributions over that period would be around $90,000. The remaining $190,000 or more would be entirely from investment growth. That is what compounding does when you give it time and consistency. Now let's talk about the fear of market crashes, because this comes up every single time. Markets do drop. They always have, and they probably always will. But here's the reframe that changes everything. Market downturns are not disasters for long-term investors. They're actually opportunities. Every dollar you invest during a downturn buys more shares than the same dollar would have bought at the market's peak. Experienced investors don't panic during volatility because they understand they're thinking in decades, not days or weeks. The people who get hurt are the ones who sell during drops, lock in their losses, and then miss the recovery. If you have your emergency fund in place and you're invested for the long term, you have no reason to sell. You can simply wait and let the recovery work in your favor. Let me leave you with the full roadmap one more time. First, build your emergency fund before doing anything else. Second, eliminate high-interest debt while capturing any employer matching contributions. Third, start investing inside tax-advantaged retirement accounts like a Roth IRA or your workplace 401k. Fourth, keep it simple by starting with diversified, low-cost index funds. And fifth, invest consistently every single month without trying to time or outsmart the market. Give compounding the time it needs to work. Here's the deepest truth underneath all of this. Saving gives you security. Investing gives you freedom. And the earlier you start connecting those two things, the more dramatically your financial picture changes over time. You don't need to be rich to start. You don't need to understand everything before you take the first step. You just need to start. So, here's my question for you. Where are you right now on this journey? Are you still building that emergency fund? Or have you already started putting money into the market? Drop your answer in the comments below, because I genuinely want to know, and your response might actually help someone else who's reading those comments, trying to figure out where they stand. If this video helped you see the path more clearly, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Protect your leaves. Think before you ape in. And as always, apes together strong.